Hey, welcome to Master of None, Too Often Dreamers. Today I'm cutting all this luscious grass that you see before you because somebody doesn't care about it, but I do because I use it to train my dog and other stuff. But I have two electric lawnmowers. It's the Ryobi Crosscut and the Ego Select Cut. So today I just want to see which one cuts better, which one lasts longer. We have the Ryobi, has 2 batteries, and the Ego that has just 1 battery. So, just gonna cut it and see. Rather show you than tell you. This is more so just like gonna be a time lapse. Cut off.
The grass is too long, you are cutting too low.
Still can't really cut. this, even though it cuts off, it keeps cutting back on. So I want to see if it'll finish this out. I'm fine with they cut, like how they cut. My issue is that and there's this huge of a difference. So you can see here, we've got some straggling grass that didn't get cut, but I'd say that's more of technique rather than the lawnmower, because I had to figure out how far over do I need to position each pass. So as you can see as we come over, you can see that the passes became a little tighter, became a little neater. You still have a couple stragglers, but that honestly is normal even if you have a gas powered, because again, it's all in the technique. But you can see, cut this pretty well, cut it pretty wide also. I'm really kind of pleased with that. Again, my cutting techniques can be better. If you come down, I guess you can see more like just onesie twosies. But if we come over here to the Ryobi side, you can see areas where it just didn't cut at all. So I had to make several adjustments while cutting. The first pass in each, I had it at the 5 setting and height wise. Both of them were on medium speed. And you can see how it just didn't cut. So with the Ego, it literally cut off when it was getting too thick. The lawnmower would just shut off. Here, it would slow down, but it wouldn't shut off. But you can see how it's just not cutting. I was still cutting over here, just not as cleanly. But here, it's like, doesn't even look like it tried to cut it at all. So same, even with the second pass, I had to raise it sooner. I raised it when I got to the end of this cut on the Ryobi. But it was probably halfway through on the Ego on the way back that I raised the lawnmower to 7. Here I raised it to 7 when I got all the way to the end because it just couldn't do it. Came back, still wasn't really cutting it super well, so then I had to slow down the self-propelled speed, and that did help some, especially in the thicker areas. But it's still, like, you could still see here where it was especially thick that still wasn't really cutting. So then by the time I got here, I would slow it to the very minimum speed, keep everything else cutting at about medium speed, but when I got to the thicker areas, go full minimum. And it still, like, cut a lot better, but still had several issues. So then what I had to do, like, if you can see here, still see some pretty long patches where it didn't really cut. So I had to get to a point where I was cutting maybe a quarter of the way into the lawnmower and not a half. Like for the Ego, I was doing about 3/4 of the way over into the blade in order to not get any skips in the passes, like right here. But on this, I was doing up to a quarter to a half of the width. You can kind of see here, my shadow's in the way. But you see I'm about halfway, a little over half. But even doing that, it just wasn't cutting it, like quite literally. Again, we've got the 2 batteries, the 6 amp hours. Both of them died. It's supposed to give me about 75 minutes of cutting time, I don't think we were at that at all, but that was also expected because this is a lot thicker grass. It all depends on the type of thickness of grass that you're cutting. The Ego is supposed to give me an hour of cutting, which I also don't think it did that, but it's only the one battery, the 7.5 amp hour battery. So you can see that this still cut a much wider range, faster time, everything with 7.5 amp hours as opposed to 12 amp hours. Yeah, it's just, I think the results here are pretty cut and dry. You get it? Cut. Crack myself up. Okay, so now I want to talk about some of the differences between these two lawnmowers. We have, again, the Ego Select Cut, and then we have the Ryobi Cross Cut. They're both 21-inch lawnmowers, the deck size. They both have LED lights on the front, but with the Ryobi, when you hold the trigger, those lights come on. So they stay on whenever you're cutting, no matter what time of day it is. You can't turn that off. And LED lights, they don't consume a lot of energy, but it's still consuming some. So I don't really like that they're always going to be on whenever you're cutting, but they do cut off after about 20 seconds after you release the trigger. Another thing about the Ryobi is the batteries, and more specifically the indicating light on the batteries. So both of these have an indication light. However, you can't see it while you're cutting. So if you're cutting, you have to stop what you're doing and then come press this button, see how much battery life that you have left, or you just have to wait until it cuts off completely. On this Ryobi, you have self-propelled control that works well. It's all fine. In order to get the self-propelled to work, you have to hold the trigger and then press the button or press this lever, but then you can control the speed minimum to maximum, which it works, but when you're in the middle sections, it's a little finicky, like it's very sensitive, but it works. Coming over to the self-adjustment, I do think this is a win over the Ego. It adjusts with one handle very easily. I'll show you the difference on the Ego. I also think this is somewhat of a win over the Ego, is the handle release. It's a lot simpler. Tilt it up, that's how you store it. Bring it back down, just pull it that way, locks in place. Very simple, very quick, very easy to use. Now coming over to the Ego, and I'm gonna talk about these LED lights. Still have fewer LED lights on the Ego than you do on the Ryobi, but I have a button that I can press back here and it will turn the lights on, as you can see. Can you actually see the lights? Yeah, I mean they're on, but you probably can't tell on that. And then I press the button. Oh, I didn't turn them on. So press the button, you can see that they turn on, and I can turn them off at will, which again, I think that's better than having them on all the time. But if you come look at this battery, you lift this cover up, and this cover is translucent also, like that one is, but when everything is engaged and functioning, still show that, yeah, you can still see the battery indication from back here. You can still see the battery indication from back here while you're cutting, so you know how much life you have left. Also, if you look here, if you can't see that far, maybe it's too bright or something, you still have indication lights right here, and it will display where things are. So right now it's showing green when I press it, but it's moving, so let me just do that. I don't know if you can see that green or not, but it's green, showing that everything's in tip-top shape. It will even show you different indications of green, orange, or red if it's like too hot, or if the battery's just dead. But again, you can still see it from through this window. So this speed adjustment is just this knob right here. That's all you gotta do. I think that's a little more intuitive. You can slow it down. Even though this battery is dead, it still like has some juice that I can still like actually make it go if I want to. That the Ryobi, when it dies, it's just dead. Can't do anything else. So for this Ego, it folds up a little more compact than the Ryobi does. You have to fold it all the way in. Cannot start the motor on the Ego without this fully extended, and that's part of its safety mechanism. So you have to pull this all the way out, clamp it, and then you can start the motor. So it's a little more work to do in that regard, but still one lever hit and you can fold it up, fold it back down. But you do have to do this extra motion. And then when we come to the lowering and raising, going down, pretty simple one-handed. But coming up, not as easy. Like I have to do a little extra work. Either I have to put my foot here to stop it, or just hold the lawnmower in place, give it a little extra pull up so it's not as hard to maneuver. But again, I think the Ryobi, very easy to move up and down. One last thing I want to show on the Ryobi, it still has this translucent cover, and you can see some of the battery, but you had to press the button in order to see where it is. But I was under the impression that if having two batteries, that they worked simultaneously, or at least it worked one and then automatically would switch over to the other side whenever a battery was dead. But there's this key, which is a part of its safety mechanism as well. But there's an arrow on this that indicates which battery it's going to be pulling power from. So when one goes dead, you turn it over and plug it into the other side. And I think that's the way that they're saying you can get the full 75 minutes of runtime. And another way to make that work for you is to just have one battery plugged in at a time, keep the key in. While you're running with one, you have the other one charging, and then you swap in and out that way. Right side is a little harder to get out, which I think that's why I was able to get this so cheap, because it was a return. It was previously used once, and it was really hard trying to get it out the first time, and it was just stuck in while everything else was taken out. But this one was stuck. But now I think I've played with it enough that it comes out a lot easier.
You're gonna have to mute that laugh. You said play with it enough.
I also wanted to show that there is a size difference between these two. The Ryobi is bigger, has bigger tires, bigger head space, everything. But they are both brushless, and you can hear that brushless technology working as you're cutting, because as I'm going through thicker portions, you can hear the motor revving up faster. That's a part of the benefit of the brushless technology. It will try to maintain its power level and sustain that through the whole cutting. So what may change is the speed in which it's running, even though the torques might change in that. But it will kick up, it will rev up when needed, and it won't use power inefficiently. And that's why you want brushless. It's also going to be smaller than if it were a brushed motor, and it's also, again, going to be more efficient. It's going to be quieter, and the motors will last longer in the longevity of the unit that you're using. One thing that I think goes into why the Ego may cost $50 more is it comes with a lot more. So you'll have 3 different blade attachments for mulching, for a high efficiency cut, and for more of a bagging cut where it'll draw in more suction power, I suppose, just gives the grass more lift for bagging. With that, they both do come with bags and the bracketry that goes with the bags. They both come with their version of their rapid chargers. So this 7.5 amp hour battery will charge in about an hour, and it will give you about an hour of runtime. The 6 amp hour Ryobi also will charge in about an hour, and each battery should give you probably half an hour. No, not even that. Yeah, about half an hour. Little over half an hour, about 35 minutes probably, in a very optimum setting. But with Ryobi, you don't get all the extra cutting blades. You just get the 2 blades that it comes with that's already pre-attached. You get the mulching tool, or I guess it's not a tool. You'll get the mulching insert with both, and you also get the side discharge unit. So one more thing I want to notice is this little flat guard that's supposed to protect from kickback as you're walking behind the lawnmower. You see how it's not straight across, and that's because when you fold it up, it reaches the blades can then cut it, and it's like, why would they design it to be that long if that's the possibility? But on the Ryobi, you don't have that same issue. When this folds back, it can't reach the deck, so it can't reach the blade. As you can see, nowhere close. So there's no chance of that getting cut. Another thing that I find notable difference between these two is that with the Ego, when you're using the self-propelled function, it kind of withholds some of that torque even when you let go of the self-propel lever. It then makes it difficult to try to turn around, or if you need to back up a little bit, it's still holding on to some of that torque, and you can't just easily go about it, so you have to pull forward a little bit and then back it up in order to relieve that. And then with the Ryobi, when you let go of the lever, lets go of the torque, and there's no resistance when you want to turn or have to reverse really quickly. So weird thing here is that it seems like while it's just been sitting here doing nothing, the battery level increased, and then I'm able to cut it on again. So I want to see. Okay. But now these 2 middle ones are blinking. I have to look and see what the blinking lights mean on the batteries. I have no idea. But this one is now 2. That one's back to 2 again. What the heck? This makes no sense to me. Okay, it's dead again. I don't understand this thing. In conclusion, I think it's pretty clear the Ego does cut better. And I think that has to do with their technology. Their battery technology is just a little more advanced than other competitors. They have the 56 volt lithium ion batteries, whereas this Ryobi is a 40 volt. And even compared to other brands that may have a 60 volt or an 80 volt, the ego still tends to be more powerful because of how they manipulate their battery technology and the amperage and the wattage that they're able to pull out of each battery. How they do it, I don't exactly know, but it clearly works. So if you're looking to spend $600, I would definitely go with the Ego over the Ryobi. And technically, I think the Ego is like $650, but I often see them on sale for $600. But the Ryobi is always $600. Again, I got this Ryobi slightly used for about $215. I got this Ego brand new for about $571. I can't tell you how I did that, because then I'd have to kill you. All that being said, I'm probably going to keep the Ryobi because that's a savings of $356. Already did the math. So yeah, I do like the Ego. If I am able to get another Select Cut Ego lawnmower for cheaper, I definitely will. But for right now, the Ryobi does a decent job if you're not cutting really long grass like I was just showing. That's really not going to be a typical scenario for most people because they're going to be cutting their grass weekly. But if you do have thicker species of grass, you may have some issues where the Ryobi will, I think, cut through just about anything.
No, that's the Ego.
Huh?
That's the Ego.
Did I say the Ryobi?
Yeah.
Where I think the Ego will cut through just about anything.
Is the elephant heavy? I'm coming back, baby.